one last doubleheader Sunday in this year's tournament. One last game for the Chennai Super Kings this season, but not one last game for MS Dhoni. It's the first thing that he's clarified at the toss that he's won in Abu Dhabi in match 53, the final league stage game for both Chennai and Punjab, that Dhoni will definitely not be saying goodbye to the yellow of the Chennai Super Kings. We're going to see more of him. But while he and CSK say goodbye to this year's tournament, can they spoil the Kings 11 Punjab party? They've already made matters complicated for KKR and RCB in their last games after being the only team not in contention for the playoffs. Can they do that to Rahul and co as well? We'll find out on Whirlpool Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. Tom Moody with me in what's turning out to be a highly dramatic, if you could spin it that way, not a bizarre, but a highly dramatic last few days of the league phase, Tom, where there are teams that could finish as high as second, and if things don't go well, they couldn't even qualify. Punjab, the story of the tournament so far, need to win this one, don't they?
Yeah, they certainly do, and they've had a crazy ride, haven't they? Let's face it. They've started the tournament off in in disappointing fashion. A lot of people felt they had a good side, but they missed opportunities to secure some early wins, which has put them in this position. They had that freakish run of games that come to an end last game. It's going to be interesting to see how they approach this game, clearly, because it's a must-win game. When, they're in that position in the middle part of the tournament, they're really playing for free, if I could put it that way, where, they know that they've nearly blown their whole season. So they can play fearlessly because of that. And players and teams become very dangerous when, they know the pressure of an outcome is not as great as it is this evening. Like this evening is a different ball game. You've got two teams, one that's playing for pride, one that's so used to being at the other end of the table in CSK, and you've got the other, Kings 11, who have, really, really featured in finals over the history of the IPL. Have got this crazy situation where if they win tonight, they could be at the big dance.
Yeah. There's effectively, that's what it's simpler for Kings 11 than it is for other teams, because results last night, the Sunrisers beating RCB convincingly and Delhi going down to Mumbai means that Punjab's net run rate is actually better than Bangalore and Delhi. So the loser of that game is a team that Punjab will definitely be better than if they win today. And that should make matters pretty straightforward for KL Rahul's side. That one of Bangalore and Delhi will qualify for certain. The other will have to look at other results. But if Punjab win today, then they would be better off than RCB and the Capitals. And they'll keep an eye out on how the KKR Rajasthan game goes this evening and how Hyderabad fare against Mumbai on the last day. It's a simple one for Punjab, though. After that crazy run of wins that Tom's just referred, they went down in the last game to the Rajasthan Royals. They've now made changes to their team. We were expecting Mayank Agarwal to find a place as soon as he's fit, and Punjab fans will be delighted that he is. Mandeep Singh, who's put in a good shift while deputizing for Mayank, keeps his spot. We thought Deepak Hooda would be the obvious player to go out, but they've actually made an overseas swap as well, Tom. They've left out Glenn Maxwell, who didn't bowl in the last game and batted just 6 balls, and they've brought in Jimmy Neesham. Can you make sense of that?
I'd like to say yes, but you just look at where he's positioned there on that team sheet. He's positioned at number 7. Now, number 7 historically faces less than 10 balls in T20 cricket. That's a given. Yeah. That's a fact. So he's going to have minimal impact with the bat. You also look at his bowling, and do you consider him as a bowler that, yes, he's going to be accountable for 24 balls? I would say probably not. So to me, he's neither one or the other with regards to his role in the side. And when you've only got 4 overseas players, you've got to make sure each and every one of those 4 play in a impactful role. They play in a role where they can dominate the game. They can either get runs at critical times, and they're recognised at doing that, or they're wicket takers or particularly good defensive bowlers. I would have personally preferred to go with Mujib, purely on the basis is that he's a specialist bowler. You can bank on his 24 balls where they're playing as well in Abu Dhabi. I feel that he would have certainly an impact there, and particularly given it's a day game where I think the spinners, you're not sort of taking that risk of dew coming into play and all those things that can throw a bit of a challenge to spin bowlers.
It seems like a significant shift away from what they believed their ideal balance to the side was. And it's an interesting one that they gave Glenn Maxwell such a long rope, hoping that he'd come off in one game. And now, just ahead of the playoffs, that faith seems to have been shaken a bit.
Yeah, it is. Unless we're not seeing something that, with the surface we feel that, or the role that we see Neesham playing. We're assuming that Neesham is going to bat 7, and we're assuming that he's not going to take the new ball. He's going to be used as a part-time bowler, as a 6th bowler. We're making those assumptions. They may have other grand plans. They might be thinking, well, we're going to use him as a pinch hitter or whatever. We don't know what's behind the closed doors. But personally, given you're only allowed 4 overseas players, I'd make each and every one of them really count. And nothing against Neesham, because I think Neesham's a wonderful all-round cricketer. But to me, Maxwell, even though he hasn't fired yet, to me, with the overs that he's bowled quite usefully when he's bowled. He's one of the best fielders in the tournament, so he's going to add value there. And you just never know. Maxwell facing 10, 20 balls, he's capable of, going at a strike rate of over 200 plus, because that's what he's known for, even though he hasn't quite been given that opportunity yet, or when he's had those little opportunities, he's failed to make hay.
When I look back at that team, I'll just pull it up for you again, that Punjab team. It looks like Neesham's got a bigger role, because unless you're counting on Deepak Hooda or Chris Gale to bowl, of which we've not seen much evidence of, then the 5 on your right are your only bowling options. You've also dropped Arshdeep Singh, who perhaps had his first and only bad game of the tournament last season, in what we've established were fairly challenging conditions to bowl with.
Yeah. Well, there may be some injury issue there. Who knows? But to me, looking at that batting lineup, it looks like it's far too generous, where their bowling looks very thin. Yes, Hooda can be the 6th bowler, and he's done that successfully in the past. He bowls his modest off spin, a little bit like Maxwell, and can bowl a couple of overs. You can't bank on 4 overs, but he can fill a gap. That's where I'm sort of talking with regards to Neesham. Neesham is the genuine all-rounder that you normally wouldn't rely on his 4 overs up front, not up front, but throughout the 20 overs that are on offer, where Mujib historically has done it very successfully, and he also can bowl at any phase of the game.
You'd think with Mayank Agarwal coming back that perhaps there was a stronger case to not necessarily compensate on the batting side, but that's what Punjab have gone for. Is it a curious thing, Tom, that when everyone counted them out, they put together these wins one after the other, and the minute the conversation around Punjab changed, if they win the next few, they're going to make the playoffs. Then you suddenly stumble. You lose against Rajasthan. Now you're saying you're in a great position to make the playoffs, and you've made all these changes.
Well, it's really interesting that, because you only have to think back to when they were stumbling and losing games, the volume of changes they were making to their team from game to game. Now, they've had this incredible hot run. They drop one game, and suddenly we see 3 changes. I can totally understand one of them in Agarwal coming back in. Absolutely. If he's fit to go, you press the button regardless, win, lose, previous game. But the rest of it, I'd be intrigued to know what the real thinking behind those decisions were, because, one thing that I have been saying throughout this whole IPL is that sort of certainty and security around selection is really important in a team environment, and they've rolled the dice here today.
We'll come back to the Punjab conversation, especially with what sort of approach we can now expect from what looks like an even stronger batting unit, or a batting heavy Punjab side. So we'll come to that, and KL Rahul and everything. But let's just confirm the Chennai team before that. There are a couple of changes that MS Dhoni makes as well. He leaves out Mitchell Santner and brings back Imran Tahir. So few changes being made by him. Faf du Plessis is fit. He comes in for Shane Watson. And Shardul Thakur gets a game after being left out for a couple. And Karan Sharma goes out. There is the threat of Chris Gale and Nicholas Puran. So he's decided perhaps, Tom, that Jadeja should be the only left-arm orthodox spinner.
Makes a lot of sense. And Imran Tahir is a smart enough bowler, and also, a well-equipped bowler to bowl to left-handers. So he won't be looking to spin the ball into Gale. So he'll be looking to bowl a lot of wrong-uns, changing his pace wide of the crease angling it across Gale. So, I think that's a very good and makes a lot of sense. And it's fascinating to see that Imran Tahir, who was one of their main wicket takers last year, has hardly featured for CSK. Look, we all know that he's a ripe old age, but as Chris Gale has shown, it doesn't matter. Your age is a number. It's really down to performance. It's down to wickets taken, runs scored, and Imran Tahir, still runs around like a 10-year-old.
Yep. Karan Sharma also misses out. So just the one spin option that will bowl into the left-handers, you think. And there's the other change of Shardul Thakur, who bowled well in the reverse fixture, got key wickets, Rahul and Puran. So back comes Shardul Thakur. The other change is Shane Watson now gone. You think that anyway, Dhoni was inclined with Ruturaj Gaikwad's form to play just one of Faf and Watson, and Faf pretty much answered that with his form this season. In which case, Tom, is this the end of Shane Watson in the IPL?
Yeah, look, I think it possibly could be. Shane Watson's had an incredibly decorated career. And he has, since his retirement from international cricket, has dominated franchise cricket and IPL cricket. You just take yourself back to, a lot of people seem to forget that, he was really the backbone of the Rajasthan Royals, and the runs and wickets he took there. We only think of Watson now as the opening bat, but he was one of the best all-rounders that the IPL's ever seen. So if it is, it's a warm congratulations to Shane Watson on an extraordinary career. He's been one of the real features of the IPL since its inception, and he's been responsible for a number of trophies.
Yep, fair enough. Player of the series, wasn't he, in 2008? That's how good Shane Watson was.
Yep.
You look back.
I was just going to say, and I can particularly remember one final performance against the Sunrisers, which basically stole the trophy off us after having them on the back foot.
I was going to come to it, and what turned out to be and what turned out to be a memorable year for Watson, because he didn't get a run until that day, until he showed up against Tom Moody's Sunrisers 11 in that remarkable year when CSK came back. So yes, a two-time champion in the IPL, a champion T20 player. He smashed records for Australia in T20I cricket, and who's to say we still won't see Shane Watson in the PSL or in other leagues that he continues to have an impact in. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he does get another season and what looks like a CSK team that's on the route to transformation. Let's come back to the Punjab argument, shall we? The conversation, rather. It's an argument if you're a KL Rahul fan and you seem divided and polarized on opinion on how he should bat. So perhaps for the 45th time in this year's tournament, we're going to have that conversation with Tom Moody. Because I guess the last game has again put us into that space where we're trying to think, you've got Nicholas Pooran. And I think that's the conversation I want to have with you, Tom. Something different. You've got Pooran in this sort of nick, and it seems like you're not giving him enough opportunity to impact the game. Is that down to some degree to how KL Rahul plays?
Yeah, possibly. I think it's also down to the fact that I don't think at the start of the tournament they would have planned that Chris Gale was going to bat 3.
Yeah.
So I think their world and their thinking has changed quite dramatically from those early games, which created chaos within that playing group. But the last 4 games, there's no question that KL Rahul, even though that he's maintained some volume of runs, he's not getting them quick enough. As I said in the last game, there are times that you've got to respect that there are certain matchups that you need to absorb, and that matchup in the last game was Jofra Archer, and you try to defend against that and deny the likes of a Jofra Archer wickets, which he did, but he needed to then, after doing the job there and navigating that challenging opening spell, he needed to press the button and move a lot quicker. As it turned out, I think if Dew didn't take a role in that run chase, I think they had a total to win. But given they knew that Dew was potentially going to be there, they probably should have pushed for 10 to 20 runs more than what the expectation was.
Now, I'm curious to how this conversation can be had with a KL Rahul, who has addressed this in press conferences this season, saying strike rate's overrated. Don't look at strike rate. Look at the impact of my innings on the game, or I will play according to what my team needs of me. But now clearly you're looking at having this kind of conversation. Rahul's one of your senior most batsmen. You think he's got the best understanding of his game, but how do you have a conversation with him to say, if you're facing 40 balls, I need you to be at 150? I mean, how can you have that with your main batsman?
Yeah, look, I don't think you put it down to a pure number. So I don't think you go in there saying, look, your strike rate over the season is 10 or 15 lower than it should be. I don't think that's the discussion. I think you feed off what he's already sort of identifying in the media, and that is the impact it has on the team, whether it be positive or negative. So without it being a threatening discussion, it's more just a discussion around, how do you think we could have approached this innings better? How did you feel during this phase your innings was tracking? Did you feel that maybe we could have, accelerated a bit more without it making a personal an attack on your key player and your captain? And let's face it, the leading run scorer of the IPL, you make it more about the team and about what the team requires, and compliment where there is time to compliment, but also reflect and review areas you feel that possibly there was that 4-over spell there that we absorbed six dot balls and only hit 2 boundaries. So what was going on there? How could we have dealt with that differently? Was there an opportunity where you could have pressed the button and searched for a couple of boundaries? Because we know that at this venue, we know against this opponent we need to be getting 24 to 26 boundaries, and we only achieved 22.
Yeah.
So those types of discussions is an easier way to, I suppose, peel back the scar, because there is a scar, and naturally players get a little bit defensive when there is an attack on them, when they feel that by the way, haven't you noticed on top of the run scorers?
Yeah, sure. Very few players have it, but can having all the gears sometimes be a challenge, not knowing which one to then play when?
It's like playing golf with 50 golf clubs, isn't it? At times you're only better off with 3 or 4 options. But look, I don't think so. I don't think this is an issue for KL Rahul. I think that I think it's more that argument you're talking about there. I think is more a suited discussion around someone like Glenn Maxwell, who at times you don't know what pace or it seems that he doesn't know what pace he should be going at. Where KL Rahul, to me, is more of a pure batsman that, has got those gears and can shift comfortably from one to the other without any issue. I think it's more about game awareness, more about, where the game's at and what's required right now, against being totally absorbed with just batting. Look outside of your batting bubble and look a little bit beyond that and think, well, okay, this is where the game's at. This is what's required, and what's required of me for this team or my team to maintain ourselves in this contest is to, accelerate at this point or whatever the case may be.
I'd like to then now move the conversation to Mayank Agarwal. We've had so much conversation on KL Rahul. Maybe quietly, we've seen Chris Gayle get runs and Rahul's continued to get runs. But in some ways, Mayank Agarwal's been a significant miss. He's allowed for KL Rahul to play this sort of game, you'd think. And Mayank Agarwal, even when Punjab were losing, had a massive impact at the top. This is very timely, his return, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, look, well, he's a quality player, isn't he? He's emerged over the last couple of years as everyone knew that, that he could play, but at times, for any young player, it's just about opportunity. And this year he's getting that regular opportunity in T20 cricket, and he's turned a few heads. A lot of people thought, wow, I didn't realise that, this kid had this type of game in T20 cricket. Well, it's amazing what happens when someone gets an opportunity to shine. And, we all know that he's very good friends with KL Rahul. So I think that's, bodes well as a partnership up front. And even though they're very tight and very good friends, there is that rivalry as well. They'll be very aware what each other's stats are. And Agarwal's just probably making a point that, well, if KL Rahul can go at this tempo over the last few years in OPL. I just want to prove to people that it's something that I can do as well.
Now, terrific season for Mayank Agarwal. I'm going to ask you one of those hard questions again. He's on his way to the plane, and he's on the plane in Australia, right? You'd think without Rohit Sharma, there is a slot open now for who opens with KL Rahul in T20I cricket for India. Samson opened the last time he played T20I cricket for India. Dhawan's found a way back into this team, and there's Mayank Agarwal. Who do you think has been the most impressive all-round T20 opening batsman that should get the first choice or first preference for India?
Yeah, it is a tough question, isn't it? Well, the World Cup, I'd be thinking ahead. The World Cup was going to be in Australia, is now forecast to be in India. Whether that's still the case, given the current situation with the pandemic globally and also what's happening in India, is it going to be potentially shift to the UAE? So I would be thinking a little bit beyond just that question and look at, well, who's the player I think is best suited to where the World Cup's going to be played? So if you feel that, that is, a right hand or a left hand or a more experienced player like a Shikhar Dhawan, you then press the button accordingly. So I think there's a little bit more detail and thought that needs to go into that decision. I think, put it this way, India as a country have got a spoil of riches, more so than any other cricketing country in the world. So that's what it creates, this dilemma. You could have the same discussion and argument around the wicket-keeping role, around the middle order role, around their bowling attack. There's many, many different discussions you can have. That's purely because they've got a wonderful depth of quality and talent within this country.
Yep. It's like, again, the 50 golf club argument, isn't it? We got too many. If we had a few, we'd be able to pick a team that everyone would be happy with. Now there are so many that demand a case that it always ends up being an argument. All right. This is the last sort of left field thought that I'll put out there. Gale has been brilliant for them, comes at the back of a 99. I read a stats piece, though, after that innings, which put that 100 or put that half century as one of Gale's slowest, right, by his extraordinarily high standards. If they get off to a good start, which Mayank Agarwal and Rahul tend to do more often than not, would you be tempted to throw Nicholas Pooran a little earlier?
No, I wouldn't. I hear where you're coming from. I would just be briefing Gale that let's don't go light on the pedal when you get out there. Let's take it down. And Gale's a smart enough cricketer, been around long enough time, and understands exactly what's required, and would I'm sure do what the team requires. But look, I understand that argument. There is we're all desperate to see Nicholas Pooran given an opportunity to bat for a longer period of time, because from the start to finish, it could be one of the greatest rides of all time. Sure. I saw him score 100 in the Caribbean Premier League this year, and it was just mind blowing. What breathtaking shots that this young left-hander was playing. So we're all sort of waiting for that sort of magical innings, and the only way you're going to get it is by giving him more balls to face. I wouldn't do that, to answer your question, as tempting as it would be. Okay.
I guess in a strange way, then if I'm a Nicholas Pooran fan, which I'm confessing I am, I'd like to see Punjab go 10 for 2 early on, and then Nicholas Pooran have a nice 90-ball innings, and God knows what he'll do, not 90, but a 60-ball innings, and see what he can do. Modi, let's pick up this conversation at halftime. It's a big 20 overs for Kings 11 Punjab. Can they bat CSK out of it? Let's find out. And they've got a lot of batting, so see how that affects in any way, if at all, KL Rahul's game at the top. He's got his preferred partner and Mayank Agarwal back. Where will Mandeep Singh bat? Keep an eye out for all that. We'll pick up the conversation with Tom Moody on Whirlpool presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell.